How much money should you be willing to spend on a luxury wristwatch? I'll tell you. All right, so first and foremost, when we're talking about money, that can be kind of a personal thing, right? I'm not here to tell you how you should or shouldn't spend your money, and I am not your financial advisor. So this video is really just for entertainment and educational purposes only, so take it for what it's worth. Now, among my friends that are just beginning to get into watch collecting, one of the hurdles that they mentally have to get over is spending a lot of money for a luxury wristwatch. I mean, after all, these things are not cheap, so it can be a challenge to get over kind of that mental block of spending thousands of dollars on a wristwatch when you can get an Apple Watch for just a few $100. And if I'm being honest, these things are also really addictive. And so you can kind of go down a rabbit hole spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, always wanting the next biggest and best thing. And so I think you have to be comfortable spending a fair amount to get something that you want, but also you need to be disciplined enough that you're not going to go bankrupt chasing the next biggest thing. And so today I just kind of want to go over my mental framework that I use to ensure that I'm not spending all of my money and going into bankruptcy just to collect these little wristwatches. But at the same time, I feel comfortable spending a fair amount to collect something that I love. So first and foremost, I want to talk about watches as an asset class. We had this conversation among watch collectors where they kind of ask themselves, are watches investments? And I would say this, for the vast majority of people that are just going and buying a timepiece from a jewelry store, most of them are not going to be very good investment vehicles, in that vast majority of wristwatches are mass produced. They're not super rare. There's a cost in storing them and in upkeep. And so as an investment vehicle, it's not going to outperform something like the total stock market. Now, there are some people that are very knowledgeable, especially when it comes to vintage or luxury wristwatches. And there are some people that might make some money. But for the vast majority of people and the average watch collector, I would say that they're not going to make a ton of money, quote, investing in watches. Now that I've got that out of the way, I would say that luxury watches can be an alternative asset class. And when I say asset, I'm not talking about the Robert Kiyosaki definition of an asset being something that you own that puts money in your pocket every month. Yeah, luxury wristwatches aren't doing that. But when I think of the term asset, I think of something that I could today go and take a wristwatch, like a Rolex Submariner. I can go to my local jewelry store and turn that right into cash. And so I do see some wristwatches as being somewhat of an alternative store of value. Now, because I don't see these as investments, I don't think of the money that I have tied up in watches. I don't have that as part of my investment portfolio. I just think of watches as something that I love, that I enjoy. And when it comes time for me to move on, or I've maybe lost interest in it, or I get really hard up and I need the money, luxury wristwatches can be turned into cash. And so for that reason, I would say that they are an asset. So with most collectibles, I think you do have to be really careful because it can be kind of addictive collecting them. And so while I might consider them to be somewhat of an alternative asset, I don't want to jeopardize my financial future in order to collect them. I personally am a really big fan of Dave Ramsey. My family has followed the Dave Ramsey baby steps, and by doing so, I fully anticipate that I will be able to retire a multimillionaire. And I'm not trying to brag or anything like that, but it is a proven framework that if you follow it for 30 plus years, which by the time I retire, I will have, I think it's a no-brainer. So if you want the full details of Dave Ramsey's financial peace style program, or what's oftentimes referred to as Dave Ramsey's baby steps, I would refer you to his channel and his content. But essentially the first few baby steps are, you're going to save $1,000 in an emergency fund. You're going to organize your debts, or your bad debts, your consumer debts, everything but your house, from smallest to largest, and then you employ what he refers to as the debt snowball. So instead of tackling the highest interest rate first, he sees it as it's better to get the psychological wins and then let your debt snowball get bigger as it rolls down the hill, and then it becomes easier to tackle your bigger debts. So you rank all your debts from smallest to largest, everything but the house. You look at your smallest debt first, and you're going to pay the minimum payments on everything, and then just throw extra money at that smallest debt until it's paid off, and then you go to the next smallest debt, so on and so forth, until you've paid off everything except your house. Once you finish baby step 2, then you're on to baby step 3, which is you want to save 3 to 6 months of your household expenses. So in step 3, you're kind of building up that rainy day fund so that if something happens, you have some type of tragedy that occurs, some unforeseen thing that happens, you have the money to be able to pay for and get you out of that bind without going into debt. And then his 4th baby step is you should be putting 10 to 15% of your monthly income into a long-term retirement account. Baby step 5, you're funding kids' college. Baby step 6, you're paying off your house early. And then baby step 7 is you give your money away. You have lived like no one else so that later you can live like no one else. You should be generous to your family, to your community, and just be a positive impact on your community. I absolutely love that framework for having financial independence. And so I would never advocate someone to take out loans or to buy on credit something like a wristwatch or really any other type of consumer good. You will be better off as an individual and better off as a man if you can develop the discipline in order to save up over time and to be able to pay cash money for that luxury wristwatch. Now, where should you be in those baby steps for you to purchase a luxury wristwatch? I would say you got to be in baby step 4, meaning you have your emergency fund, all your consumer debts are paid for, you have those 3 to 6 months of expenses, you're actively contributing to your retirement. Then you should be able to have that money set aside that you can buy that luxury wristwatch and do it guilt-free, and then you can truly enjoy it. The way I see it, if you've purchased a wristwatch on credit and you're still paying that item off, I kind of see it as almost like you don't really own it free and clear yet, right? You have the debt. I think you've kind of cheated your way to this luxury consumption. And ultimately, you're going to be spending more money on that item, probably because of interest, or just the psychology of being able to buy things on credit. Oftentimes, it gets the individual to purchase more than they would if they were paying cash for something. And so because of that reality, I am not going to buy luxury goods on credit where I'm having to pay it off over the course of several months. I just see it as, hey, I'm not in a position to buy that luxury or that unnecessary item, and so I'm fine waiting and saving up over time and then purchasing it just outright when the time comes. So the first rule for me is I am not going to jeopardize my financial future in order to collect luxury goods. Now, the next thing I'd consider after being financially responsible is what's the dollar amount that I should be willing to spend at the max to get the wristwatch. And I think for every individual, they have to set their own personal limits. I personally can admire wristwatches that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, but for the amount of money that I earn a year, it's just not realistic for me to go spending that much money on it. I don't want to spend a life-changing dollar amount on something that I'm going to wear around, that could potentially get stolen, that could get damaged, and is probably losing value over time. And so the framework that I give myself is I'm not going to spend more than 1 month's salary or 1 month's pay on a wristwatch. Diamond companies, I think it was the De Beers Diamond Company, had a advertising campaign and kind of put out this idea that you should spend up to 3 months' salary on an engagement ring. That's completely stupid in my opinion. I was dead broke when I got married to my wife, and her ring was actually a resized family heirloom. So it cost us a few $100s, I think, to get the ring resized. But it was a really modest diamond, and she loved that ring. Then after finishing my education and building some real-world skills, my monthly income has obviously increased. And then several years ago, we ended up upgrading my wife's wedding ring. And I set that same limit. 1 month's salary for her new ring. And actually, my first Rolex, we got that when my wife was upgrading her wedding ring to her nicer ring. And so it was a nice little compromise. I was able to upgrade to a Rolex, and she got the diamond ring that she had always wanted. And by that point, we had been married several years. We had plenty of kids together, and it was looking like our marriage was going to work out. And so it wasn't like I was going to be out 3 months' salary on some divorce that happens within a year of getting married. Another thing that I like about kind of this framework is that if you're able to live below your means, you can set aside, let's say, 10% of your income for a year, and then you're going to have that month's salary already in the bank to be able to go out and buy that luxury good. And then I also don't worry about it too much. I mean, after all, if you lost a month's salary, if you have 3 to 6 months expenses just in the bank, I'm not going to lose sleep over that. And so it makes it so that when I'm wearing that luxury timepiece, I'm not so worried about protecting it or it getting scratched or it getting stolen, because, at the end of the day, it's not going to change my financial situation if something was to happen to that watch. So as I get older, my skill set, my level of competence grows, my income increases, then I'm able to buy a nicer luxury watch that's going to be commensurate with the amount of income that I'm earning. And total pro tip for someone that's wanting to buy a luxury watch and their spouse isn't on board, totally feel free to utilize the wedding ring upgrade technique, because after all, fair is fair. And again, since I don't include wristwatches in my financial portfolio, I don't worry about the total amount that I have tied up in watches, because as long as I'm following that framework of I'm adhering to those baby steps, I'm saving for retirement, I'm never spending more than a month's salary on a single timepiece, I'm not going to get in financial trouble by continuing this addiction of watch collecting. So there you have it, guys. My framework of how much you should spend on your watch. First thing, never compromise your financial future by collecting luxury goods. Make sure that you have at least the first 4 baby steps down, and then never spend more than 1 month's salary on any single timepiece. Let me know your thoughts. If you disagree or you strongly agree, let me know why down in the comments below. And remember, guys, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if your income allows you to afford a Seiko or a Rolex, as long as you wear your watches.